No one expected the halls of justice to shake that morning. Not even the officers lining the marble staircase could explain the pressure in the air, the way the walls seemed to hold their breath as the black SUVs rolled up silently. Doors swung open. Agents stepped out in synchronized precision, faces stone cold, eyes forward. Something was happening, something the public had been waiting for, and Diddy had feared for months. As the convoy reached the entrance, reporters surged forward, microphones raised like weapons. Is it true the evidence has been reclassified? Did the appellate court cancel his plea arrangement? Is today the day? No answers, only tension. Inside the courthouse, the courtroom was already overflowing. Federal officers stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, forming a barrier thicker than usual, a sign that whatever was about to unfold would be historic. Cassie sat in the second row, hands clasped, eyes locked on the empty defendant's chair in front of her. Her breathing was steady, but the tremor in her fingers betrayed how much today meant. A faint knock. Then the door opened. Diddy walked in, not with swagger, not with celebrity's entitlement, but slowly, cautiously, like a man who already knew the ground beneath him was collapsing. His eyes scanned the room, briefly catching Cassie's. She didn't look away. She didn't blink. He did. He looked away first. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, whispered something into his ear. But Diddy wasn't listening. His attention kept drifting to the judge's bench, where a new set of sealed folders waited. Thicker, heavier, marked with red tape he had never seen before. And then the heavy wooden door behind the bench opened. Judge Aaron Subramanian stepped in. You could feel the shift instantly. He didn't sit right away. He stood there, scanning the room, breathing in its tension, before finally taking his place. Court is now in session. The gavel fell once. Silence. Before we begin, the judge said, voice steady but sharp, I want to make something abundantly clear. Overnight, new material evidence was submitted by multiple federal agencies. Evidence that directly impacts the sentencing parameters of this case. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Diddy stiffened. Agnifilo swallowed hard. Cassie closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing for impact. The judge continued. Under federal statute, when new evidence emerges that fundamentally alters the court's understanding of a defendant's actions, this court has the authority to reevaluate sentencing recommendations. He paused. And that is precisely what we are doing today. Gasps erupted. Reporters typed furiously. A bailiff slammed a hand against the bench to restore order. Diddy leaned forward. Your Honor. Agnifilo grabbed his arm. Don't. But the judge held up a hand anyway. Mr. Combs, you will remain silent unless addressed. His voice was ice. He opened the first folder. A stack of printed screenshots. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every page stamped, classified, unsealed for sentencing review. Diddy's face drained of color. These documents, the judge said, include encrypted phone logs, interstate flight details, witness intimidation directives, as well as contraband possession while in federal custody. The last words hit the courtroom like a detonator. Contraband possession. While in custody. Immediately whispers rose. Officers exchanged looks. Cassie's hand flew to her mouth. The judge continued. Contained in this evidence is footage, time-stamped, authenticated, and cross-verified, showing Mr. Combs in violation of correctional code, possession and consumption of alcohol, hidden inside his cell. A reporter gasped loudly. Another dropped her pen. Diddy's eyes widened. His lawyer's shoulders slumped. The judge pressed on, voice tightening. Under normal circumstances, this would constitute a separate disciplinary process. But given the totality of the evidence collected, including what this court will reveal momentarily, the legal implications extend far beyond simple misconduct. He closed the folder. A deep breath. This court is now considering an extraordinary escalation in sentencing. The room froze. Every heartbeat seemed to echo. Diddy's lips parted, but no sound came. Cassie's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but something closer to long-awaited vindication. Judge Subramanian lifted a second folder, larger, darker, stamped with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This, he said, tapping the cover, is the reason we are here. And once its contents are read into the record, the recommended sentence may be upgraded to life without the possibility of parole. A chilling silence spread through the chamber. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Diddy exhaled shakily, the sound of a man who finally understood he might never see daylight as a free man again. The judge lifted the gavel slightly. We proceed now. The lights in the courtroom seemed to dim on their own as Judge Subramanian lifted the thick FBI-sealed folder. Even the camera crews lowered their lenses, realizing that whatever was inside that file wasn't ordinary evidence. It was the kind that rewrites the entire trajectory of a case. Agnifilo leaned toward Diddy urgently. Don't react. No matter what comes out, you stay still. Do not give them a single expression they can use. But Diddy wasn't listening. He was staring straight at that folder like it was a coffin lid being pried open. The judge slid the evidence toward himself, unclipped the metal fasteners, and opened it. A soft gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even from the back rows, people could see what rested inside. A stack of printed still frames, each one labeled Inmate C4021, Diddy's inmate number. And every still frame had the same background, the interior of a correctional cell. His correctional cell. He mouthed one word under his breath. No. The judge pulled out the first sheet. This still image, he said calmly, was extracted from surveillance footage recorded 12 days ago. It shows the defendant holding an item that is strictly prohibited in federal detention. He held it up high enough for everyone to see. The courtroom collectively inhaled. A bottle, a clear glass bottle, small, palm-sized, wrapped in a torn piece of bedsheet like an improvised concealment pouch. And every person in the courtroom could see exactly what was inside. Not water, not medicine, but a deep amber liquid. Alcohol. Diddy shut his eyes, jaw clenching until the muscles twitched uncontrollably. The judge wasn't done. Image 2. Another still. This time Diddy wasn't just holding the bottle, he was tilting it. Head back, eyes half closed. A deep violation of custody rules. A reckless act of arrogance. A disrespect for the court and for the justice process. Agnifilo whispered desperately, "Don't look at the screens, Sean. Don't give them anything." But it was too late. Everyone saw the panic spreading in his eyes. The judge placed the images down with near ceremonial precision. What makes this evidence significant, he continued, is not simply the possession of alcohol. It is how the alcohol was obtained, smuggled, and hidden, specifically through a network of bribed personnel and unauthorized access into restricted storage areas. A murmur erupted, louder this time. Cassie swallowed hard, gripping the edge of her seat, as if steadying herself against the weight of the truth finally breaking through the surface. Diddy's voice broke out suddenly. "I didn't do that. That's not, someone planted." The bailiff stepped forward immediately. "Mr. Combs, silence." Judge Subramanian lifted his eyes slowly. "You will have your turn to speak. Until then, you will remain quiet." He turned another page. "This," he said, "is where it becomes more serious." He lifted a sheet showing a series of transcribed text messages, each photographed from a confiscated contraband phone found in the same cell block. The messages were short but devastating. "Need delivery at 2 a.m., same entry point. Payment cleared. Got the bottle. He says hide it under the vent. He needs another by Friday. Says he can't sleep without it." Diddy's breathing grew shallow. Agnifilo scrubbed both hands down his face. The judge continued reading. "These messages are tied directly to Mr. Combs' inmate account and involve personnel now under federal investigation. This constitutes conspiracy, bribery, smuggling, and deliberate subversion of detention controls." For a moment, the room was silent, the heavy kind of silence that suffocates a person's last remaining hope. Then the judge set the papers aside and reached deeper into the folder. What he pulled out next sent a shockwave through the courtroom. A USB drive. Black. Unmarked. Sealed in evidence plastic. Cassie leaned forward ever so slightly. She knew, everyone knew, that nothing good ever came from a USB drive in a federal case. They carried the worst truths, the darkest recordings, the secrets meant to stay buried. Judge Subramanian tapped the sealed drive with one finger. "This," he said quietly, "contains the full surveillance footage. The gallery erupted. Reporters whispered wildly. A camera clicked. Someone gasped out loud. "They have video?" The judge raised his voice above the chaos. "Order in this courtroom? Now!" The room went silent again. The bailiff carried the USB to the clerk's desk where a courtroom technician waited with trembling hands. He inserted the drive into the port. A soft beep echoed through the speakers. A tension so thick it felt like smoke lingered in the air. Diddy whispered hoarsely, "Please don't play it. Please." Agnafilo's voice cracked. "Your Honor, I object to video playback under these circumstances." Overruled. The judge didn't even look at him. He nodded to the technician. "Play the footage." The screen flickered to life, grainy at first, then slowly sharpening into the unmistakable image of Diddy's prison cell. The timestamp blinked. 02:13 a.m., November 29th, 2024, cell block D3. Diddy appeared on screen, pacing in the darkness, glancing toward the door every few seconds. He kept wiping his face with both hands, the behavior of a man unraveling. Then a shadow appeared at the door, a correctional officer. The room gasped in unison. On the footage, the officer reached into his jacket and pulled out the same small glass bottle. He slid it under the door. Diddy snatched it with the desperation of an addict. The real Diddy dropped his head into his hands. Cassie looked away. Reporters stared in disbelief, frozen between shock and vindication. Judge Subramanian's voice cut through the heavy air. "This is the reason the court is considering the maximum possible sentence." He leaned back, eyes fixed on Diddy. "This is not simply misconduct. This is corruption, manipulation, influence, a demonstration that even in custody, you believe the rules did not apply to you." Diddy's breathing hitched. A quiet, broken sound. The judge lowered his voice. "And now, Mr. Combs, we proceed to the next file, the one that will determine whether your sentence is upgraded to life without parole." He lifted the second, even thicker FBI folder. Cassie's heart pounded. Agnafilo's hands shook. Diddy whispered, "Please, good." The judge opened the file. The room went still when Judge Subramanian opened the second FBI folder. This one was thicker, heavier, and the edges were bent as if many hands had gripped it with fear before it reached the courtroom. Everyone leaned forward. Cassie's fingers froze around her tissue. Agnafilo adjusted his tie even though he'd already fixed it 30 times. Diddy swallowed hard, the first real sign of terror since the trial began. Judge Subramanian didn't speak right away. Instead, he removed a single sheet from the folder and held it up. A witness list. Only one name was on it, one. The judge read it silently before saying with a level voice, "Before we continue with evidence, the court will hear testimony from a new witness." A tremor swept through the gallery. Agnafilo stood abruptly. "Your Honor, the defense was not notified." "You were notified at 6:12 a.m. this morning," the judge cut in. "You chose not to open the email." Agnafilo choked on his breath. The gallery chuckled nervously. The judge continued, "The prosecution's final witness may enter." The courtroom doors opened with a slow, echoing creak. Every camera tilted. Every reporter leaned over the railing. Footsteps approached, measured, steady, almost militarily precise. The man who stepped inside wore prison khakis, wrists cuffed, shoulders rigid, eyes fixed forward like a soldier walking into a battlefield. The marshal announced him, "Andre Fixer Dalton, inmate 50732. A gasp exploded across the courtroom. Cassie looked stunned. Agnafilo froze with his mouth half open. Someone in the back whispered, "No way, no way, that's his guy." Because everyone knew Andre Dalton, Diddy's former problem solver, the man rumored to do what others wouldn't. The man who had vanished 2 years earlier when federal investigators pressured him. Rumors claimed he disappeared. Some said he fled the country. Others said Diddy paid him to stay silent forever. But here he was, wearing cuffs, eyes deadened, ready to speak. Diddy's voice cracked. "Andre, why is he here? Why is he here?" Andre didn't look at him, not once. He took the stand, raised his cuffed wrists, and was sworn in. When he lowered his hands, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear the electricity buzzing in the overhead lights. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Mr. Dalton, state your involvement with the defendant." Andre's eyes slowly lifted to the judge. Then he answered, voice steady, I handled things for him, anything he didn't want his name on. The room erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Someone yelled, "Holy!" before getting shushed by the bailiff. Diddy practically lunged forward, hands shaking. You said you'd never talk, he shouted. The bailiff grabbed his arms. Andre still didn't look at him. Instead, he continued, I was the one who managed deliveries, threats, payments. Sometimes I made people disappear. That was my job. Even the judge couldn't hide the flicker of shock in his eyes. The prosecutor nodded grimly. And were you involved in the defendant's recent misconduct inside federal detention? Andre inhaled deeply. Yes. Cassie covered her mouth. Diddy shook his head violently. No, Andre, don't do this. But Dalton kept speaking. I arranged the alcohol for him, paid the guard, set up the drop point. His exact words were, the prosecutor raised a hand. Mr. Dalton, for the record, please read the defendant's instruction as written. Andre unfolded a piece of paper from his pocket, the one he demanded be added to the record before testifying. His voice darkened. Make sure I get something to take the edge off. I can't sit in here sober. Use anyone, pay anyone, just get it done. A collective gasp burst across the room. Cassie lowered her head and cried quietly. Agnifilo tugged at Diddy's sleeve. Stop reacting. You're hurting yourself. Diddy didn't stop. He grabbed the table edge so hard the wood creaked. That's a lie. You were supposed to... Mr. Combs, the judge snapped. One more outburst and you will be removed. Diddy froze, breath heaving. Andre finally turned his eyes toward him, just for 1 second. And that single second looked like betrayal carved into stone. The prosecutor resumed. Mr. Dalton, why come forward now? Andre closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them with the weight of 10 years in them. Because when I got locked up, he didn't protect me. He cut me loose, let me rot, treated me like a tool he broke and threw away. The judge nodded. Continue. Andre's voice thickened. I've done terrible things for him, things I'll never undo. But I decided I'm not dying with his secrets in my hands. I'm done carrying the weight of another man's sins. Silence. Dead silence. Then Andre delivered the sentence that shattered the last piece of Diddy's defense. And there was something else the court needs to know. Something I've been holding back. The prosecutor leaned in. What is that? Andre looked at the judge, then at Cassie, then at Diddy's trembling hands. It's about the night of the Miami recording. The one everyone thought was lost forever. The gallery froze. Even the air felt like it stopped. Judge Subramanian's grip tightened around his pen. Mr. Dalton, are you telling this court you possess knowledge of that night? Andre nodded. I don't just have knowledge. He lifted his cuffed hands. I have the recording. A scream erupted from someone in the gallery. Someone dropped their phone. Reporters burst into chaos. Diddy collapsed back into his chair. No, you don't. But Andre's voice remained calm. It's real. It exists. And it's the reason he threatened people, paid people, hid people. The judge raised a hand for silence. Mr. Dalton, do you agree to submit this recording to the court? Andre nodded once. Yes, I gave it to federal investigators 1 hour ago. Agnifilo almost fainted. Cassie burst into shaking sobs. Diddy stared at Andre with hollow disbelief. Judge Subramanian closed the folder slowly, almost ceremonially. Then this court will review the recording immediately. He rose from his seat. Recess for 20 minutes. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Cassie was trembling uncontrollably. Agnifilo looked like he aged 10 years in 5 minutes. Andre sat still, face blank, ready for the consequences of everything he had just detonated. And Diddy looked like a man whose soul had been pulled out of his body. Because he knew whatever was on that recording would decide whether he walked out of prison in a box. The courtroom falls into a silence so heavy it feels alive. The clock above the witness stand ticks softly, tick, tick, tick. But to everyone in the room, it sounds like a hammer swinging closer to a verdict that will change everything forever. Judge Helena Ward slowly leans forward, fingers interlocked, her eyes locked onto Diddy with a strange mixture of pity, fury, and disbelief. For the first time since the trial began, she speaks not as a judge, but as a human being trying to understand the unthinkable. Mr. Combs, before I proceed, I not an answer. The room shifts. Lawyer strikes in. Reporters freeze mid-sentence. Even the jurors lift their heads like people waking from a trance. Diddy's jaw tightens. His cuffs rattle. His eyes dart toward the guards, but they don't move. Judge Ward continues, voice steady. A voice that carries the future in it. Why? The word is simple, but it hits like a gunshot. Diddy doesn't respond, not yet. He looks down at the floor, the same floor where his empire died piece by piece over the last 9 days. Judge Ward repeats, why did you do what you did? Why did you continue? Why did you silence people instead of helping them? The courtroom goes breathless. A few sniffles echo from the back. Family members of victims gripping tissues, wiping tears, holding hands so tightly their knuckles turn white. Diddy finally lifts his head. His voice is low, cracked, hollow. Because I couldn't let go. Everyone leans forward. Let go of what? The judge asks gently but firmly. Diddy closes his eyes. He inhales deeply. Then, power. A visible shiver ripples across the courtroom. He continues, slower now, unraveling in real time. I was never afraid of losing money. I was afraid of losing control. Of people seeing the real me. A victim's mother gasps. Someone whispers, my God. Diddy's voice breaks. Every time I felt my grip slipping, I tightened it. And every time I tightened it, someone else suffered. This is the closest he has come to an admission. But it's not remorse. It sounds like a man describing a machine he built that finally crushed him. Judge Ward watches him with eyes that do not blink. Mr. Combs, she says quietly, you controlled everything, except yourself. His head drops. The prosecutor slowly rises, speaking softly. Your Honor, the state rests. But defense attorney Marcus Hill jumps up, desperation in his voice. Your Honor, my client is under extreme emotional pressure. These statements cannot. Judge Ward raises one finger. Hill stops instantly. He spoke freely, and the court heard him. Hill sinks back down, defeated. Diddy rubs his face with trembling hands. Then Judge Ward reaches for the folder, the one with the sentencing documents inside. The one everyone knows holds the weight of a lifetime. The courtroom braces. But just as she opens it, the doors burst open. A marshal rushes inside, out of breath, eyes wide with urgency. Your Honor, I apologize, but something's happened. The judge's eyebrows lift. The entire courtroom rises in a wave of tension. What exactly has happened? She asks. The marshal swallows hard. A new recording has surfaced from inside the federal penitentiary. It includes audio, video, and a personal confession from an inmate who claims he was ordered by Mr. Combs to. The room explodes. Gasps, shouts, chairs scraping, phone screens lighting up like a storm, reporters sprinting for the hallways. Judge Ward bangs the gavel so hard it cracks. Order! Silence drops again like a hammer. Diddy turns pale. His fingers shake. His lawyer whispers urgently, but Diddy doesn't hear him. The judge's voice lowers. Bring the recording. The marshal nods and signals someone outside. A technician rushes in with a government-issued laptop, the kind used for evidence that cannot be tampered with. They place it on the table in front of the judge. The judge leans forward. Her finger hovers over the play button. Diddy whispers, voice desperate, Your Honor, please don't. She doesn't look at him. Her answer is simple. The truth doesn't pause. Click. The screen lights up. A dark prison cell appears. An inmate sits on a bunk, head down, voice shaking. I didn't want to do it, but Diddy said if I didn't follow his instructions, my family would pay. The courtroom erupts again. Diddy's face drains of all color. The inmate continues. This wasn't about survival. This was about keeping him comfortable, keeping him supplied, keeping him powerful, even inside prison walls. Diddy slams his cuffed hands on the table. That's a lie. But nobody believes him anymore. Not after this. Judge Ward closes the laptop slowly. She breathes in once, then, Mr. Combs, after viewing this, I am forced to reconsider your sentence. Everyone freezes. Reconsider? Upgrade? Diddy closes his eyes. Because he already knows. This is the moment everything ends. The courtroom holds its breath. Outside, the streets of Manhattan pulse with anticipation. The news vans are parked, cameras trained, microphones held like swords. Every reporter, every citizen watching live, waits for the moment that will be written into history. Inside, Diddy sits rigid, cuffs glinting under the harsh fluorescent light. His empire of influence, the music, the money, the fame, all stripped down to a single man in chains. His eyes flicker toward Cassie. She doesn't look away. Her stare is unbroken, unwavering. Judge Ward's voice slices through the silence. Mr. Combs, the court has carefully reviewed the new evidence. It is damning, unquestionable. The actions you orchestrated, the lives you manipulated, and the threats you levied all point to a level of culpability that cannot be measured in months or years. The words hit like a hammer. Even the walls seem to tremble. Mark Hill, Diddy's attorney, leans in, whispering feverishly, but the judge is relentless. This court believes in second chances, but the pattern of obstruction, the manipulation, the deliberate harm inflicted on those who trusted you is beyond what mercy can repair. Therefore, Diddy's breath catches. The room seems to tilt. The court hereby vacates the prior sentence of 50 months. A faint whisper escapes the gallery. No, and sentences Sean Diddy Combs to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The words echo like the crash of a tidal wave. Silence falls, then chaos. Phones hit record, cameras flash, gasps ripple through the spectators. People stumble backward, their mouths open in shock. The murmurs rise to a crescendo of disbelief. Diddy's head snaps up, eyes wide, a mixture of rage and disbelief flooding his face. No, that's not right. You can't do this. His voice cracks. He struggles against the cuffs, every word raw with desperation. I built this city. Bang, the gavel slams. The marshal steps forward. Remove him from the courtroom. Cassie covers her mouth as tears spill down her cheeks. Relief, exhaustion, injustice collide in her chest. She doesn't speak. Words are useless here. Justice, raw and unpolished, has finally landed. Diddy is dragged toward the doors. His voice echoes down the hallways, half yelling, half breaking. You think this ends me? I am the music. The door slams shut. Outside, reporters scream into live feeds. Diddy sentenced to life without parole. The crowd alternates between cheers and cries, some in celebration, others in disbelief. The city feels divided. Half the world mourns, half revels, but no one can ignore it. The transport van pulls away from the courthouse. Diddy watches the city blur past behind the steel mesh window. For the first time in decades, control slips through his fingers. Every turn of the wheel sounds like a countdown, not to freedom, but to forever. At MDC Brooklyn, the heavy gates clang shut. Guards call his name without titles. Combi's cell 27. The sound of locks snapping echoes like an endless sentence. He turns once, seeing the lights of Manhattan one last time. Then it's gone. Cassie steps out to the press, voice trembling, raw but firm. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth. And tonight we got that. The city's night hums around her. Social media explodes with hashtags, debates, viral clips. The story's everywhere. But one truth remains unshaken. The day power met permanence. Inside the prison, Diddy sits on the hard metal bench of his cell. No entourage, no cameras, no empire, just silence. He whispers to himself, voice thin and broken. They turned my music into a verdict. The guards don't respond. They've heard it all before. Denial, disbelief, rage. Outside, Manhattan continues, indifferent yet electrified. Lights blur, taxis honk, people shout. But for Diddy, the world has ended. The city he once ruled now feels like someone else's stage. Judge Ward, alone in her chambers, stares at the sign ruling. The faint hum of the city rises through the windows. She murmurs under her breath, "Justice doesn't end careers. It ends cycles." By midnight, every channel, every feed, every conversation has rewritten the day. November 6th, 2025. The day one of the most powerful men in entertainment history lost everything. And in the prison skyline, wind whips against steel. Once he owned every room he walked into. Tonight, the only thing that belongs to him is silence. The stage is set. The city knows. The world knows. Only Diddy's fight inside those walls, for the rest of his life, remains. The steel door clanged behind him. One lock, two locks. The sound reverberated through the cold concrete corridor like a countdown to eternity. Sean Diddy Combs, once larger than life, untouchable, now reduced to a number. Cell 27 MDC, Brooklyn. He slumped onto the hard metal bunk, wrists raw from the cuffs. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead replaced the roar of crowds, the flash of cameras, the adoration of millions. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. Outside his cell, footsteps echoed. Guards moved with routine precision. Every step a reminder. Freedom is gone. The empire is gone. The music, the power, the city he controlled. Nothing reaches these walls. Diddy's mind raced. Memories of the courtroom, Cassie's unwavering stare, the gavel's final bang, the judge's words, "Justice doesn't end careers. It ends cycles." Looped endlessly. Rage surged, then despair. "This isn't real. It can't be real," he muttered, voice breaking. The first night in prison was the quietest. He listened to the distant hum of the facility, the occasional clang of metal doors, the muffled curses of inmates. Outside, Manhattan's skyline twinkled, an unreachable galaxy now, a reminder of everything he'd lost. Meanwhile, across the city, Cassie sat with her team in the quiet of her apartment. The legal battle was over, yet the weight of the day pressed on her shoulders. She hadn't celebrated. She had only allowed herself a long exhale, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and sorrow. The truth had been served, but justice never healed entirely. Back at MDC Brooklyn, Diddy's arrival caused a stir. Prisoners whispered, guards observed cautiously, and the faint echo of his name carried weight even here. "Combs," someone murmured. Others stared, curiosity mixing with recognition. He was still a figure, even in chains. He spent the night pacing the small cell, the hard floor cold beneath his feet. Every shadow on the wall seemed to mock him. Every distant sound was a reminder. The world outside had moved on without him. "They think this ends me," he whispered, bitterness in his voice. "But they can't cage me here. I am the music. I am—" His words trailed off, swallowed by the unyielding silence. Meanwhile, social media was relentless. Clips from the courtroom replayed endlessly. Cassie's tears, the judge's gavel, Diddy's last cries. Memes spread like wildfire. Discussions turned into arguments. Hashtags like #life without parole and #justice for Cassie dominated timelines. The public grappled with disbelief, outrage, and satisfaction all at once. In the following days, Diddy's world within the walls remained unbroken by noise or visitors. He wrote in a small notebook provided by the prison, thoughts, lyrics, pleas, rants, pages filled with reflections and regrets. Each word a testament to a man forced to confront himself. His legal team promised appeals, but deep down, even he knew this was a fight against permanence, against time itself. Cassie, too, felt the aftershock. Walking the streets of Manhattan, she noticed the absence of normality. The whispers, the stares, the occasional glare of someone still loyal to Diddy. Justice had been served, but its impact rippled far beyond the courtroom. She realized the world had changed, and in some ways she had changed with it. Back in cell 27, Diddy stared at the ceiling. For the first time in decades, he felt powerless. The music, the empire, all gone. "Just me," he whispered. And for the first time, he wondered, could a man survive when all that defined him had been erased? Outside, the city carried on. News cycles moved to other stories. Crowds dispersed, and life resumed its relentless pace. But inside the walls, time moved differently. For Diddy, each second was a sentence, each minute a reminder. The night stretched endlessly. Silence, cold and heavy, pressed against him. No accolades, no applause, only the echo of his own thoughts. And somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of the city he once ruled reminded him of everything he had lost and everything he would never reclaim. Weeks passed. Outside, Manhattan moved on, but inside MDC Brooklyn, the echoes of November 6th never faded. Sean Diddy Combs, once untouchable, sat in cell 27, tracing the lines in his notebook, each page a testament to confinement and reflection. His empire was gone, his freedom gone. His name, though still spoken with reverence or scorn, carried only a hollow weight now. The world outside remained relentless. Headlines replayed the courtroom drama on every channel. Diddy life without parole. Justice prevails. Empire ends. Social media churned endlessly. Debates raging over power, fame, accountability. Fans mourned. Critics celebrated. And somewhere between outrage and awe, history recorded the fall of one of entertainment's titans. Cassie walked the streets with quiet purpose. The press had long since cleared out. The crowds dissipated, but the magnitude of the day lingered. She had wanted truth, and she had it. Yet victory was bittersweet. She had seen a man who had wielded influence like a weapon reduced to a number behind a metal door. She felt relief, but also a solemnity that no photograph or soundbite could capture. Inside the prison, Diddy adapted, not with surrender, but with the cold precision of someone who understood that survival here was measured in patience, not power. He learned the routines, the clang of doors, the guarded nods, the calculated silences. In this new world, influence had no meaning. Respect was earned in whispers and watchful eyes. And yet, he found a strange clarity in the structure, a rhythm that reminded him of beats and bars, though now the music was only in his mind. Letters arrived, some from family, some from old collaborators, but most remained unopened. The outside world had moved on, and those who once circled him like satellites had scattered. Diddy, once surrounded by constant affirmation, now confronted himself without distraction. His words, his actions, his choices, they were all laid bare in the stark mirror of incarceration. Cassie, meanwhile, continued her work. Her cause became larger than a single case. She spoke at schools, community centers, and advocacy groups about truth, accountability, and the fragile line between power and responsibility. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed the consequences of silence and complicity firsthand. The city watched her rise in parallel to Diddy's fall, a narrative of consequence and courage intertwined. Months became a year. Diddy's public persona faded into history. Interviews, radio plays, concerts, all relics of a world that now belonged to memory. Inside the walls, he wrote relentlessly, trying to capture the rhythm of a life he could no longer live publicly. Yet, with each page, he confronted the truth he had tried to bury. You cannot manipulate justice indefinitely. Power can be taken, fame can fade, but accountability endures. One evening, as the fluorescent hum bathed the cell in its sterile glow, Diddy looked up at the ceiling and murmured softly, almost to himself, "The music, I thought it made me immortal. But immortality isn't in applause, it's in consequence." And for the first time, he accepted it. Not fully, not easily, but with the slow, quiet understanding that comes when walls leave no escape. Outside, Cassie paused by a memorial in the city plaza, a new plaque dedicated to victims of exploitation, deceit, and abuse of power. She traced her fingers over the name, etched in stone, and whispered a quiet acknowledgement of justice achieved. She felt no triumph, no vengeance, only a profound relief that the cycle had been stopped, that truth had been preserved. And somewhere, high above the city, the skyline remained, shimmering, indifferent, yet eternal. It had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the laughter of crowds, the silences of verdicts. For Diddy, it was now a distant memory, a reminder that no crown, no kingdom, no chart-topping album could outlast accountability. As night settled over Manhattan, the final frame lingers. Cell 27, stark, silent, and unyielding. Diddy sits alone, a man stripped to the core, facing a lifetime measured not in months or years, but in the weight of every decision he had ever made. The city sleeps, the world moves forward, and justice, raw, unpolished, uncompromising, remains. November 6, 2025 is not just a date in history, it is the moment power met permanence, the day accountability silenced influence, and the echoes of consequence reverberated across every street, every studio, and every heartbeat touched by the legacy of one man's choices. The screen fades to black. No fanfare, no applause, only the hum of wind against steel and the silent weight of truth endured.